Today, we're going to talk about the FBI and their influence on elections using Twitter, and you're going to find out just how far back the Democrats' love of censorship goes. Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone. This is Keith. Welcome to the Ghetto Sapien channel, your home of inner city intelligence. So, I know you heard about the recent news where Twitter has been exposed and been working with the FBI to influence elections, crush free speech, and punish politicians they didn't like. So, if you didn't know now, if you didn't know before, you know now. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But this all goes back to the left's love of censorship and their fear of open conversations. It goes as far back as the 1950s. There was a doctrine that started in, I think, 54. Might go back further than that. It was called the Fairness Doctrine. Sounds good, right? Fair. Who doesn't like fairness, right? But you should always worry when the government talks about what's fair and what's not. That's always a bad sign. So what the Fairness Doctrine was supposed to do, let me see if we can bring up this article real quick. Okay, so the whole thing behind the Fairness Doctrine, what it was supposed to do, it was supposed to make it so when you have strong opinions, like some hot button issue that's out, that it gets equal time on the air. Like it says, when many people hear from the article in Cato Institute, when many people hear the phrase fairness doctrine, they picture a time at some indeterminate point in the past when broadcast media were responsible and balanced. Back then, they imagined radio and television station owners couldn't air only their own opinions and spread unchecked information. They had to let the other side on any given hot button issue have their say, allowing the good guys to act as a check on the bad guys and their lies. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar, like today? That narrative is almost entirely a myth, despite its evocative name. The Fairness Doctrine was primarily a tool wielded by established political interests to suppress unwelcome speech. That is so damn true. And let me tell you, this is how it worked. So the Fairness Doctrine, this is how it worked in reality. If you had someone like a Rush Limbaugh who was dying to get out there and talk on a radio, before he could speak like for an hour, he would have to find his equal on the left who would be able to counter him. Not directly. It wasn't even like it was a debate. If Rush Limbaugh was on for an hour, you had to find a Rachel Maddow for another hour to go on after him, or before, whatever. Unless you could find, so if Rush Limbaugh the station wanted to work for, if his station couldn't find a leftist who wanted to go on the air for an hour, you couldn't have a Rush Limbaugh. So that's what happened. Talk radio was just very sparse. It was just, you hear religious stuff when you drive across the country. You wouldn't hear the very interesting and dynamic talk radio you hear today. But in 1987, Ronald Reagan got rid of the Fairness Doctrine. People freaked out on the left. They thought it was terrible, but it actually allowed talk radio to explode. Then, that's where you had the rise of like Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. You had Michael Medved, Dennis Prager, and of course Rush Limbaugh. And the left hated it. Ooh, boy, they couldn't stand it. They screamed at how the talk radio was, dominated by the right wing, while ignoring the fact that ABC, CBS, NBC, you name it, was dominated by the left. They could not, and this is before Fox News, they could not stand talk radio. They tried to do everything to end it. They tried to boycott their sponsors. They claimed, of course, that they were racist, the whole 9 yards, whatever they could do, but they just couldn't counter it. So, since there was no Fairness Doctrine to make it harder for talk radio to blossom, it just blew up. It still continued to grow no matter what the left did. The left complained that it had an undue influence on elections. It would get Republicans to go out and vote and this is when the Newt Gingrich blew up. This is when Congress flipped and became Republican. It hadn't happened in years and years and years. Senate too, and they all blamed that on right wing radio. And it might have been that's the case, but it's fair. So it was such a big deal that in the year 2000, when there was quite a few very important elections coming up. One of them was the run for the U.S. Senate seat, U.S. Senate seat in New York specifically. It was at one point between Hillary and Rudy Giuliani. And this shows you how powerful radio was back then. Rudy had his own. He was the mayor of New York at that time, doing a great job, I thought. And he was very popular. He had his own radio show that would come on a couple of times a week, where he would engage and talk to New Yorkers. They'd call him up. They'd tell him, you suck, you're doing a great job. But the whole thing was, his policies got a chance to, he'd get feedback from the people who were affected by his policies. I think it's a great thing. You might get him to change his mind on something. You might get him to pay attention to something he wasn't paying attention to before, and he'd get a chance to defend himself and his policies. What could be wrong with that? Problem was, when he's running for office, it was considered an unfair advantage that he was able to dominate a particular platform, which is talk radio. So, and just to show you, he really did have a talk radio program in New York. It was pretty popular. The left still, they couldn't stand that he was up there talking. But it's funny, he was an engaging guy, quick on his feet mentally. And a lot of that came from the fact that he was on a radio and he got to speak his mind and hear back from the people. So, again, unfair advantage while you're running for office. The only fair thing was to offer Hillary an hour herself. Go on a radio. You wanna represent New Yorkers. Why don't you listen to them and have a back and forth, just like Giuliani's doing? She said no. What the hell she want to hear from New Yorkers for? She just wants to rule over them. She doesn't need to hear from them. Are you nuts? So she turned down the opportunity to host her own radio show and hear from the people. So Rudy had to step down too. So his show went on hiatus for a little bit. I think he's back now. But they just weren't having it. Again, Republicans, conservatives don't mind debates. If you ever watch someone like Ben Shapiro, they love going out to schools and colleges and hear from the other side. The left does not like doing it. I wouldn't say it's just part of their nature that they don't want to hear feedback. It's the nature of their policies. Their policies have failed. They're terrible. They have terrible results that you can see for yourself. You can drive around the country, and I bet you can tell which areas are blue versus red, not by looking at the polling statistics. Just start driving around and smelling the urine and graffiti. You can pretty much figure out where the hell you are and who's running things. So, leftist ideology has failed, and it doesn't do well in debate. So the left still complained about the power of talk radio, but I got to give them credit. Around 2004, they did the right thing. They actually said, if we can't beat them, if we can't boycott them, if we can't intimidate them, if we can't shut them the hell up, let's try and beat them at their own game. So in 2004, they came up with the left-wing version of talk radio. It was called Air America. I'm surprised they didn't break out in the hives by using the word America, Air America, but whatever. So it went on for about 6 years. And I used to listen to it every now and then. But the problem came back. The problem is, again, and here they went bankrupt. They lasted 6 years. And again, the problem is just, again, left-wing ideas do not do well when they're exposed to the public. At least, at least every case I've seen. So it shows Air America, this is in 2010, Air America closing, filing for bankruptcy. Let's see. The network, okay, so Air America, just so you know what I'm saying was true. Air America, a radio network that was launched in 2004 as a liberal alternative to Rush Limbaugh and other conservative commentators, on Thursday shut down abruptly due to financial woes. The network once boasted hosts such as Al Franken, he's a former senator of Minnesota, and Rachel Maddow, someone you probably heard of, but it struggled from the onset, including multiple management shakeups, a bankruptcy in 2006. That's just 2 years after they opened up, and a sale of $4.25 million the following year. That could even buy you a decent politician nowadays. $4.25 million, that's nothing. So yeah, Air America crashed and burned again because liberal ideas do not do well when exposed to the public. They can't debate, they can't defend them in any sane, rational, logical means. So no one's surprised when it crashed and burned. So the Democrats just been back to complaining about Rush Limbaugh and everyone else until the town hall went digital. When most of our conversations, the internet blew up. People went to Facebook, Twitter. Our conversations started moving onto social media platforms, which are much easier to control. So that's when things started going down the toilet really fast. And that brings us to today, when we find out, shock of all shock, that social media has been in bed with the FBI for quite some time. So they couldn't beat talk radio. So again, their alternative is get everyone over to. Well, I don't think they intentionally moved everyone to digital platforms. We just happen to be there, and then they just happen to control it. So it's like it's like the chicken. The hen house is being built right next to a fox's den. It ain't the fox's fault that you're there, but you're there and they're going to take advantage of it. So that's what's happening now. You have the FBI has been exposed. They've had their thumb on the scale of our election outcomes for God knows how long. Elon has put it out there. This is a really good post, is post number 20. This post is about the Hunter Biden laptop situation that shows Roth not only met weekly with the FBI and DHS, but with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Why all these intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, why are they so heavily involved in our elections? Because it benefits them, basically. So I'll just read this real quick. This it's worse than my own. It's worse than following my own grammar, so it sucks. Yoel has checked in. Here's what he said. What's new for you since our last check-in? That tells you there's been multiple check-ins with the FBI. Hacked materials exploded. We blocked the NYP story. That's the Hunter story. Then we unblocked it, but said the opposite. Then we unblocked. Then we said we unblocked it. And now we're in a messy situation where our policy's in shambles, comms is angry, reporters think we're idiots, and we're refactoring an exceedingly complex policy 18 days out from an election. In short, FML, weekly sync with FBI, DHS, and DNI regarding election security. The meeting happened about 15 minutes after the aforementioned hacked materials explosion. The government declined to share anything useful when asked. So basically, they knew the whole thing was garbage. They knew the hacked material story was trash. They wanted to save Joe Biden and hurt Trump and all his supporters. So that shows you how long, I mean, it's probably longer than that, how long the Democrats have tried to control speech and control thoughts and control election outcomes. Started with at least as far back as I know, the Fairness Doctrine, and it's still happening today. We need to get back to how it was when people were allowed to speak like adults and just their opinions were laid out there, and you had to defend your point of view like a grown-up without the FBI and Twitter helping you out. Hopefully we can get back to that now that this has been exposed, but we'll see. Well, that's my opinion. What's yours? Like, share, comment, and subscribe.